I should have known something was brewing. Everything in my life felt way too good to be true, especially right then. It was a gorgeous summer evening, a Friday night to boot. I was sipping on a frosty Corona, the cold beer sliding down real smooth. On the big screen, my Cubs were absolutely demolishing the Cardinals, up 7-2 by the fifth inning. My loyal German Shepherd, Buddy, was sprawled out next to my beat-up lazy boy, mostly snoozing, only cracking an eye open whenever I hollered in excitement over another Cubs hit. Other than the TV blaring and my random cheers, the house was dead quiet. Laura, my wife of 21 years, was over at a neighbor's place, and both my kids, my 18-year-old boy and 17-year-old girl, were crashing at friends' houses for the night. So, it was just me, Buddy, the Cubs game, and a stash of Corona chilling in the fridge. Oh, and some limes, too. I don't usually mess with limes, but I grabbed a few earlier when I realized I'd have the place to myself, figuring I'd treat myself nice for once. Then I heard the front screen door creak open and slap shut, and I figured it was Laura getting back from hanging with her old pal, Rachel. I could hear footsteps shuffling around up front, but she didn't yell out a, "Hey," or anything like she normally does. That struck me as kinda weird, but right at that moment, Cubs manager David Ross yanked the starting pitcher in the fourth inning despite our huge lead, and I lost it, shouting at the screen and waking Buddy up again. It must have been a good 5 minutes before Laura finally wandered into the family room. She looked deep in thought, maybe even a bit on edge. Instead of coming over to my chair for her usual quick kiss, she perched on the edge of the couch to my left. I kept one eye on her and the other on the game, trying to figure out what was up. "Hey, Steve, can we chat for a sec?" she said, her voice so soft I could barely catch it over the TV noise. At that point, she had every bit of my focus. "Sure thing, Blondie," I replied. I couldn't help but notice a faint glisten of sweat on her forehead and the way her breathing seemed uneven. My mind jumped to the worst, maybe someone we knew was sick, or worse, gone. "Steve, can you turn off the TV?" she asked, her hands fidgeting, clenching and unclenching. Turn off the TV during a Cubs game? She knew that was a big ask. This had to be serious, like someone passed away, not just an illness. A heavy knot formed in my gut as I reached for the remote and killed the sound. "What's going on, babe? You look rough. Did somebody die or what?" I asked, bracing myself. "No, thank God, nobody's dead," she shot back quick. "But this is really important to me, and I need to know you're fully tuned in." I just nodded, keeping my mouth shut. My head was a mess of dark thoughts crashing into each other. We sat there, locked in a stare for what felt like half a minute. Her eyes had this mix of fear and something else, maybe frustration or anger, I couldn't tell. "You know I'm crazy about you, Steve, and I'd never betray you or sneak around with another guy, right?" she said. That wasn't the kind of question I was expecting at all. Suddenly, the dinner I'd scarfed down earlier and the couple of beers I'd had during the game felt like they were about to come right back up on the family room carpet. I nodded again, not trusting myself to speak. "I'm 45 now, Steve. In my whole life, I've only been with one other guy besides you," she began. "I still look pretty good, you know. My friends even joke that I'm a hot MILF. I want to experience being with someone new, just once, to feel that rush of a different man, one last time before we grow old side by side." What in the actual hell? I froze, no clue how long I sat there like a statue. It felt like a freight train was roaring past my ears, drowning out everything else. "Hell no." I shouted, bolting up from my chair like I'd been shocked. "Ain't no way that's happening as long as I've got air in my lungs." Laura's eyes went wide as she watched me stomp back and forth across the room. This couldn't be real. I had to be passed out in my lazy boy, stuck in some twisted nightmare. "Steve, this isn't about us as a couple. It's about me, about what I need as a woman, separate from you and our family," she said, her voice growing steadier and more confident with every word. I think I've been a damn good wife and mom all these years. I've always put everyone else first. Just this once, I've gotta do something for myself. I need this to feel like a desirable woman who's got control over her own life. So, you're saying you don't feel desirable with me? I shot back, hating how pathetic I sounded, like some insecure kid. I'm always telling you I love you. I think I make it pretty clear how hot I think you are. I still want you bad, and I'm not exactly shy about showing it. You do make me feel that way, and I love it, but this is something else entirely. I still crave validation from other men, Steve, not just you. It feels good to be noticed by someone new. It's thrilling to imagine another guy wanting me like that. Don't you get a little boost when a woman checks you out or flirts with you? I'm no different. I want to be seen, desired, and after all these years, I want more than just looks. I'm talking about going on a real date, getting wined and dined, then being wanted by a different man for one night only. Not love, just pure desire. One night, that's it. Then I'd come back to you, be yours completely, and settle into being a regular wife and mom for the rest of my days. Blondie, you're anything but regular to me, I fired back. You're my whole world. I can't let you go off with another man. I won't let it happen. You keep saying you love me. Why not prove it by giving me this? I know it's a huge thing to ask, but it'd be the greatest gift you could ever give me if you just let me have this, she said, her tone almost pleading now. No way. It'd be the dumbest thing I could ever do to let that happen. If you truly loved me, you wouldn't have even brought this up, I snapped. Haven't I been a decent husband to you and a solid dad to our kids? Doesn't that earn me a free pass too, if we're playing that game? I asked, feeling the heat rise in my chest. But you had way more women before we got married than I had men. I'm just trying to balance things out a little, she countered. Actually, we never got into exact numbers before we tied the knot. All we ever talked about was how we both believed in staying faithful after marriage. And just so you know, I've only been with 4 women in my life, you included. Not exactly a long list of conquests, I said, trying to keep my voice steady. Oh, I always figured you had a lot more experience than me, she admitted, sounding surprised. You know plenty about me already. I've read up a lot on how to keep things good between us. I'm always trying to make sure you're happy, I told her, feeling a mix of frustration and hurt. So, it's still a flat-out no from you, huh? She asked, her voice quieter now. Not just a no, it's a hard no. In fact, come Monday morning, I'm calling a lawyer to start divorce papers, I said, watching the shock spread across her face. But, she stuttered, struggling to find her words. I get how tough this must have been for you to even ask, which tells me you're dead serious about this. And that means you're not gonna drop it anytime soon. I'm guessing you'll end up sneaking around behind my back to make it happen. I can't trust you not to do it anymore. Unless you've already gone and done it, and this whole conversation is just a cover to get my okay after the fact. No, I swear, I haven't been with anyone else. I told you I wouldn't cheat, and I meant it, she insisted, her voice turning whiny. But now that I know you want to, you'd probably think going ahead with it wouldn't count as cheating anymore, I said, staring straight at her. The way she couldn't meet my eyes told me everything I needed to know. You'd really tear our family apart even though I haven't done a damn thing yet? Laura gasped, her voice full of disbelief. Look, if you've worked up the guts to ask me this, you've been mulling it over for a long while. That tells me you've probably already got someone in mind. Hell, he's likely been part of the planning, maybe over lunches or dinners. You've already crossed a line emotionally, even if nothing physical has happened. So, who is this guy? I demanded, my tone sharp. I don't have anyone specific picked out, she mumbled, her eyes fixed on some random spot on the wall behind me. The silence stretched on for a good 15 seconds while I stared her down, my gaze burning into her. When she finally met my eyes and saw the skepticism plastered across my face, her cheeks flushed a deep red. You don't need to know, Steve, she said under her breath, barely audible. Maybe I don't need to, but I sure as hell want to know the name of the guy who's wrecking what I thought was a solid marriage. You can tell me now, or I'll start calling every single one of your close friends, your boss, and all your coworkers to find out, I shot back, my voice steady but hard. Her jaw dropped, shock written all over her. You wouldn't dare, she started to say, her voice trembling. Wouldn't I? What do I have left to lose? My life's already in the dumpster, my marriage is toast. A little embarrassment ain't gonna faze me at this point, I said, not backing down. What about how embarrassed I'd be, she screeched, her voice pitching high. I just shrugged, doing my best to hide the smirk tugging at my lips. Gimme the name, I pressed, my tone rough. Dan Wilson, she whispered, barely getting the words out. Please, Steve, don't do anything to hurt him. I'm not promising a damn thing, I replied coldly. I snatched up the remote and flicked the Cubs game back on. Laura kept going on, sniffling and trying to hold back tears, before she finally got up from the couch and trudged upstairs to our bedroom. My eyes stayed glued to the rest of the game, but my brain didn't take in a single play. I couldn't even tell you what popped up on the screen after it ended, though I know I sat there in front of the TV for at least another couple of hours. I think I did a decent job of masking most of my emotions from Laura, but deep down, I was completely shattered. I had no idea my wife was even thinking about being with another man. Looking back now, I guess I should have picked up on some hints that she wasn't happy with me or our life or something. Over the past 3 months, Laura had started pulling away, not just from me, but from the kids too. My daughter, Hannah, was actually the first to notice it, asking me if her mom and I had gotten into some kind of fight. Even our intimate moments had taken a nosedive. What used to be 2 or 3 times a week had dwindled to maybe once every other week, and it wasn't for lack of trying on my part. I started wondering if she was going through some early menopause or something. Then there were the phone calls she'd take in another room, which she almost never used to do until recently. And don't get me started on the non-stop late-night texting. When I asked about it, she claimed it was Rachel, who was supposedly having issues with her husband, Mike. That was news to me, especially since Mike and Rachel live just 3 houses down, and I hadn't heard a peep about any trouble between them. I spent the rest of the weekend wrestling with my options, turning everything over in my head. I'd told Laura I was filing for divorce as soon as I could, but first, I needed to really dig into every part of our marriage and what this meant for our family. I could totally get why another guy might be into Laura. She was a stunner when we met at 21, and even now at 45, she's only put on about 10 pounds after having 2 kids. I've always felt like I lucked out with her. She's way out of my league. I'm not some ogre or anything, decent looking, 5 feet 11 inches, 175 pounds, but guys like me don't usually end up with the high school prom queen, which she was just 3 years before we got together. Back when we were juniors at Purdue University, Laura and I ended up in the same astronomy class. I was just taking it for kicks, but she needed it to check off her science requirement. I've always been a bit of a nerd about stuff like that, and it didn't take long for Laura to figure out I'd be more than happy to help her get through the course, since science wasn't exactly her strong suit. It was late in the first semester, and we were holed up in my dorm room, cramming for a test, when out of nowhere, Laura leaned over and planted a hard kiss right on my lips. I matched her intensity, kissing her back just as fiercely. Damn, Steve, for most of the semester, I thought you might be gay, she said with a laugh as we pulled apart. No matter what I wore, you never seemed to notice me that way. Trust me, I noticed, babe, but I didn't think you'd ever feel the same. I was just trying not to make a fool of myself by staring too much, I admitted with a grin. From that moment, we were a couple, no question about it. I didn't have a ton of experience in the bedroom, but apparently, she had even less, because she never had any complaints and always seemed pretty thrilled with what I brought to the table, thanks to all the reading I'd done on the subject. While most guys my age were glued to porn, I was buried in books about intimacy, learning everything I could. That knowledge paid off right away with Laura. The second time we got close, I managed to overwhelm her so much with a simple touch that she actually passed out. At first, I freaked out a little, since none of my 3 previous partners had ever reacted like that, but I saw she was still breathing and figured she'd be fine. 2 minutes later, her eyes fluttered open, and all she could whisper was, "I love you, Steve." We tied the knot 2 years after we graduated. 3 years after that, our son came along, and then our daughter followed. Financially, we did all right for ourselves. I worked in IT, and Laura got into banking once our youngest started school. Now, our son was gearing up to head to Ohio State as a freshman in just a couple of months, and our daughter was about to start her senior year of high school. In just 2 years, we'd be empty nesters. For the past few months, we've been tossing around ideas for what our future might look like, dreaming up travel plans and all that. I've been head over heels for this woman for nearly 23 years. Part of me felt like throwing all that away just because she asked for permission to step out seemed too extreme, but then again, the fact that she even got to the point of asking was a massive red flag. I'm not naive. If she was desperate enough to bring this up, she'd probably be desperate enough to sneak around behind my back, especially since she already laid it out there and doesn't even see it as cheating, though I sure as hell do. And then there's the whole deal with her and this Dan Wilson guy already having some kind of emotional connection, planning this one-night thing together. Could I ever get past that kind of betrayal? First thing Monday morning, I got on the phone with a divorce attorney and booked an appointment for Thursday afternoon. Back at home, Laura was pulling out all the stops to convince me not to go through with filing. "Steve, we haven't done anything. I swear, we won't do anything," she pleaded, tears in her eyes. "Is that because you don't want a divorce, or because you know it's wrong?" I pressed, staring her down. She couldn't meet my gaze and stayed silent. "You're still holding out hope I'll change my mind and give you the green light, aren't you?" I asked. The flicker of hope in her eyes when I said that pretty much sealed the deal for both of us, and not in a good way. A week after meeting with my attorney, I had Laura served with divorce papers. We live in a no-fault state, and since we make about the same money, splitting the finances was straightforward. With the kids almost out of the house, we'd figure out living arrangements as we went, with the non-custodial parent covering child support for just 1 more year. The house would be sold, and we'd split whatever we got from it. Just like that, 21 years of marriage were done and dusted. Hold on, things didn't wrap up quite so quick. Laura hired a real sharp attorney who managed to convince the judge to mandate at least 4 counseling sessions, with the possibility of more if the counselor deemed it necessary. The counselor, a woman in her mid-30s, shared the same view as Laura and my kids. Since my wife hadn't actually gone through with any adultery, why was I so dead set on divorce as my only option? I laid it out for the counselor just like I did for Laura and the kids. Her even asking to step outside our marriage felt like a straight-up betrayal of our vows. Because of that, I couldn't trust her as my partner anymore. Sure, I might still have some love for her deep down, but I couldn't stay married to someone I didn't trust. "Steve, I swear I'll never even think about something like that again. You're all I need," Laura begged, repeating herself over and over through most of our first 2 sessions. "You're not gonna budge on this, are you, Mr. Rasmussen?" "I can see it in your face," the counselor said near the end of our second session. "I'm gonna call this what it is, a waste of time, and recommend to the judge that the divorce move forward without any more delays. My personal take doesn't matter here, but I'm gonna give it anyway. I think you're making a huge mistake. Your wife hasn't physically cheated, so it seems like you'd want to try marriage counseling to save a relationship that's lasted this long. She appears ready to do whatever it takes to keep your marriage and family together." I know I winced and let out a heavy sigh. I loved Laura with everything I had. This wasn't some snap decision I made on a whim. Here's where we see things differently, Dr. Carter. You called it a concession. I don't see her agreeing to stay faithful as some kind of compromise. To me, that's just honoring the vows she made to me 21 years ago, vows she was plotting with another man to shatter, I explained, trying to keep my voice steady. When Laura broke the news of the divorce to my in-laws, they just about lost their minds. The next day, my mother-in-law called me up and unleashed a 15-minute tirade of insults, barely pausing to breathe the whole time. She started yelling the second I picked up and said hello. My father-in-law, who's always been the calmer of the two, eventually wrested the phone from her while she was still going off. "She didn't even cheat on you, and you're ending a 21-year marriage? Are you out of your damn mind, Steve?" he barked. I walked him through my side of the story, detailing everything that had gone down. I could hear him making these little choked sounds as I talked. Every so often, he'd mutter a quiet "really," and I'd keep going. By the end of the call, he sounded deflated, like the wind had been knocked out of him. Finally, he just said, "I'm sorry, Steve," and hung up softly. The following week, I moved into a nearby two-bedroom apartment. My daughter chose to stay with Laura in the house for the next year until she headed off to college, but I figured the extra room would be useful if either of the kids wanted to crash with me for a bit. Both of them were pretty upset with me, though they seemed to get why I was divorcing their mom, at least on some level. A few days after settling into my new place, I had a decent chat over the phone with my neighbor, Mike. I let him know that his wife, Rachel, had played a role in Laura's scheme with Dan Wilson, and that Laura had mentioned Mike and Rachel were supposedly having marital issues. I made it clear I didn't think he had anything to do with the collapse of my marriage, but Rachel was definitely tied up in it somehow. Given how tight she and Laura are, I couldn't help but wonder if Rachel was also scoping out some younger guy for herself. "Ah, hell," Mike croaked over the line. "So you're saying I might have a mess on my hands too? Does your lawyer offer a discount for bulk cases or what?" Social media's got its pros and cons, no doubt. For me, one of the upsides was digging up all kinds of dirt on this Dan Wilson character without even having to shell out for a private investigator. Saved me a ton of cash in the long run. Turns out, this Dan Wilson guy was a coworker of Rachel's who'd moved to the local office from Cleveland about 6 months before my marriage went up in flames. He had a real pretty fiancée who was still hunting for a job in our city, so he was making the drive back home almost every weekend to see her. From what I pieced together, he was trying to line up something with Laura for when he was in town, so he'd have a warm body waiting for him in both places. I couldn't help but wonder if Laura even knew about his fiancée. At this point, it's all water under the bridge, except for the call I made to his fiancée. Word got back to me through some mutual contacts that Dan's wedding got called off, and his fiancée told him he could have his old lady full-time. Did I mention she was the daughter of some big shot, loaded guy? 2 weeks before the divorce was finalized, it would have been my 22nd anniversary with Laura. I gotta be honest, it stung deep thinking about everything I'd lost. But as I sat there poking at a Swanson TV dinner, the more my head told me I was making the right call for myself. If I'd stayed married, I'd have spent the rest of my days paranoid, always looking over my shoulder for signs she was stepping out. Deep in my gut, I knew it was only a matter of time before she'd find a way to cheat. Laura's the kind of person who can't stand losing at anything, and not getting her way on this would have felt like a defeat she'd need to fix, one way or another. I knocked back a shot of single malt whiskey and was tucked into bed by 10 p.m. Happy anniversary to me, right? Around 1 a.m., my phone started buzzing, and I saw it was my soon-to-be ex-wife. I almost let it roll to voicemail, but since I was already awake, I picked up. On the other end, Laura was wailing, clearly caught up in the heat of the moment. I'd heard those sounds enough over the years to know she wasn't faking it. There was a bunch of garbled squealing before she started urging her partner, probably Wilson, to go harder. I should have hung up right then and there, but I was stuck, like my feet were cemented to the floor. I stayed on the line for another couple of minutes, long enough to hear her lover let out a guttural sound as he finished. I ended the call before I had to listen to any post-passion sweet talk, wishing I was on an old-school landline just so she could have heard me slam the receiver down. If I had even a sliver of doubt about whether I was doing the right thing, that phone call erased it completely. On my attorney's advice, I'd gotten into the habit of recording all conversations with Laura. Sitting there, feeling my blood pressure about to blow through the roof, I dialed up my in-laws. When my father-in-law answered, I hit play on my phone's recorder app and let the full 3 minutes roll out for him. Then I hung up. I'm pretty damn sure there won't be any encore performances of that little drama from their end. Unlike Laura, I didn't go looking for company from anyone else until the divorce was officially done, and even after that, I didn't take a woman to bed for over a year. I'll be straight with you, my social life was a struggle. It had been 24 years since I last dated, and since I never planned on jumping back into that game, I hadn't kept up with how things worked. That turned out to be a terrible plan because the dating world had zoomed past me like a freight train on steroids. I knew part of my hesitation was all in my head. I was scared of getting blindsided again. I'd loved Laura with everything I had, and I never saw this coming, not even a whisper of a warning. One thing that was crystal clear, though, was how much women's attitudes had changed since I was last in the dating pool. Back then, it was all one way. The guy picked who he wanted, the guy asked her out, and if she said yes, the guy decided what to do and footed the bill for everything. Now, it feels like women are just as likely to take the lead half the time, or at least they've got opinions on how the date should go. Sometimes, they even pick up the tab. There were moments I felt like some old dinosaur trying to keep up with a cheetah. Navigating the dating scene opened my eyes to the fact that Laura's sudden self-centered streak wasn't some rare thing. Along with feeling more in charge, a lot of the women out there today seem way more focused on themselves. Plenty of them were all about getting what they wanted, even if it meant their partner got the short end of the stick. If it worked for them, they figured it'd automatically work for their significant other too. Sound familiar? Yeah, I've been through that mess, and pretty recently at that. I'm not gonna gripe about the physical side of getting close with a woman in her 20s. Alright, I'll be real, the first couple of times, I thought they were gonna put me in the ground. I'm pretty sure I tweaked something I didn't even know I had. But once I got the hang of the pace, man, the fun factor was through the roof. Don't get me wrong, Laura was great in bed, but at 45, she just didn't have the same stamina or bendiness as someone half her age. Me? I didn't have the bounce back of a 20-year-old guy either, but I made up for it with some solid skills using my tongue and hands. It had been a brutal week, and after wrapping up a meeting with a new client on the other side of the city, I decided to unwind at the bar of a fancy hotel or restaurant, still dressed in my suit. I plopped down on a high stool at the bar and ordered a shot of Glenmorangie single malt. I rolled in around 7 o'clock, and about an hour later, a lively group of women from a bachelorette party took over a set of tables marked as reserved. There were probably 15 of them, and they were making quite the ruckus. I figured I'd stick around to enjoy the show, so I ordered some food to eat right there at the bar. Naturally, the bride-to-be was the center of attention, and I couldn't help but notice she was a real pretty girl, maybe 25, with light brown hair that reached down to her waist and big, warm brown eyes. I'll admit, I've got a thing for long hair, so I found myself drawn to her, watching for a few minutes before I started scanning the rest of the group. That's when I noticed her. She looked to be around 40, I'd guess, and based on her age, I figured she was the designated chaperone for the night, the older, wiser hen keeping an eye on the younger, wilder chicks, whether they were innocent or not. The first thing that caught my eye was how she seemed a bit uneasy in her black skirt, which hit about mid-thigh and kept creeping up a little higher as she sat in her chair. In the first few minutes, I saw her tug at it a few times, trying to pull it down, but it wasn't cooperating. I couldn't help but smirk to myself, she had some damn nice legs. I also noticed she had a pretty full chest, not entirely concealed by the tight lavender silk blouse she wore. The blouse had a V-neck that dipped down to the center of her ample cleavage, revealing pale, almost porcelain skin that clearly didn't see much sun. When she wasn't fussing with her skirt, she'd glance down at her chest, probably checking to make sure she wasn't showing too much. The whole getup seemed a bit youthful for her comfort zone, and I'd bet one of the younger gals in the group had picked it out and talked her into wearing it. Props to whoever did, because they nailed it. The women were clearly having a blast, laughing, drinking, and chowing down. When a three-piece band started playing, a few of them hopped up and began dancing with each other. That seemed to give the other guys in the bar some courage, and they started approaching the ladies on the dance floor and at the tables, everyone except the chaperone. I hung back for about 10 minutes, watching to see if anyone would make a move on her. When the coast looked clear, I figured it was my shot, so I got up and headed over to her table. She had shoulder-length dark brown hair and striking green eyes that reminded me of Jacqueline Bisset back in her prime. Just as noteworthy, there was no wedding ring on her finger. When I asked her to dance, her cheeks turned a beautiful shade of pink, and though she hesitated for a moment, she eventually agreed. A few of the younger women nearby couldn't resist teasing her as she stood up, tugged her skirt down a bit, and took my hand. The first couple of dances were upbeat, and I had to mentally tip my hat to my ex-wife for pushing me to learn how to dance way back when. Then came a slow song, and I was caught off guard when she pressed her soft, curvy frame against mine. Her hair carried the scent of white shoulders, and I couldn't help but grin to myself. That's not exactly a fragrance you'd find on the younger crowd. As we swayed across the dance floor, we actually chatted a little. I learned her name was Kathleen Frank. She was the bride's aunt, and indeed the group's chaperone for the night. After the slow dance, she thanked me and started to head back to her table, but I held onto her hand and invited her to join me at the bar. She began to object, saying she needed to keep an eye on her girls, but I pointed out that she'd have a clear view of them from my spot at the bar. We sat there, watching the younger women while getting to know each other. She revealed she was actually 48 years old and had been divorced after a 15-year marriage. Her ex-husband, a guy with some serious money, had traded her in for a 27-year-old trophy wife when he was 48 himself, about 3 years ago. She also admitted that her outfit was picked out by her niece, the bride, and she felt it was a bit too youthful for her taste since she usually dressed more on the conservative side. I told her I thought the outfit suited her perfectly, and I laid on the charm thick when I said I was absolutely crazy about her sexy heels. I'd learned a long time ago that women tend to light up when you compliment their shoes. "You don't think I look out of place in this getup?" she asked with a shy innocence. "Not at all. If you'll forgive me for being forward, you look downright delicious." If I liked the soft pink blush before, I was downright smitten with the deep red flush that spread across her face now. We kept talking for about 15 minutes. She noticed I wasn't wearing a wedding ring either and asked for the story behind that. When I told her my ex-wife hadn't physically cheated on me, she seemed genuinely surprised. "I'm pretty old school," I explained. "She betrayed me emotionally and had plans to take it further physically. After that, I couldn't trust her anymore." "You don't tell someone you love them and then say you want to be with someone else in that way." "I understand completely," she replied. "Everyone's got to draw their line in the sand somewhere." A few minutes later, she returned to the bridal party's table, but she was all smiles when I asked her to dance again about half an hour later. This time, after we finished, she took my hand and led me back to the table where the other women, and now a few other guys, were gathered. The night felt like a win from where I was standing, even with the younger crowd getting a bit loud and rowdy. I was genuinely taken aback when Kathy asked if I'd be her +1 to the wedding in 2 weeks. "I was planning to go solo, but I know I'd enjoy it more with you. We've only just met, but you've already gotten to know a lot of the girls who'll be there. Plus, you'd be doing me a huge favor, I wouldn't have to show up alone and look completely pitiful." "I'd hate for you to feel pitiful. I'd be thrilled to join you at the wedding," I said with a grin. "Just let me know what color you're wearing, and I'll pick out a suit that matches." She leaned in and gave me a quick peck on the lips. I flashed a wide smile as Kathy blushed again. I could definitely get used to seeing that. When Kathy and I weren't out on the dance floor, I sat with her at the table. During one of those breaks, I kept my gaze on the bachelorette party crew, noticing that a few of them were clearly overdoing it with the drinks. Being the dad of a teenage girl, slipping into protective dad mode around young women wasn't exactly a stretch for me. So, when I spotted a young guy grab one of the girl's hands and start steering her toward the restrooms, I excused myself from Kathy, got up, and moved fast but quietly to intercept them, reaching them just as he was about to nudge her into the men's room. The kid shot me a look of pure contempt, clearly not fazed by some older dude in a shirt and tie. I'll be honest, at 5 feet 11 inches and 175 pounds, I'm not exactly the type to intimidate anyone on first glance. But I like to think I've kept myself in decent shape, and growing up, I'd been in enough scuffles to hold my own. Sometimes, you've got to be ready to take a hit to do what's right, and right then, that meant making sure this young girl didn't become this punk's plaything. I'd want someone to step up for my own daughter if she ever found herself in a spot like that. "Get your hands off me and back off, old man," he snarled. "She's old enough to mess around if she wants to." I released his arm, but with my other hand, I gripped his head and slammed it hard against the wall beside the door. I put enough force into it to crack the drywall, mess up his face with some blood, and leave him dazed. Suddenly, he didn't look so smug anymore. He let go of the girl and didn't seem eager to keep this argument going. The whole place had gone quiet as folks started catching on to what just happened. As I began guiding the girl, Emma, I later learned, back to the bachelorette group, Kathy and the rest of the party rushed over, took her by the arms, and brought her back to their table. That left me standing there, face to face with the restaurant manager and another staff member. I figured I was in for it, but then the manager extended his hand and thanked me for stepping in to help the young woman. "The cops are on their way. This kid's heading to jail. They'll likely need your info and your version of events, but I don't think you've got anything to stress about. By the way, your drinks are on us for the rest of the night." "Thanks again," he said with a nod. "Man, that was some wild stuff," the bride-to-be exclaimed when I made it back to the table. "Thanks for keeping an eye out for more than just Aunt Kathy." "How'd you even notice that?" Kathy asked, looking at me with a mix of awe and guilt. I'm supposed to be the one watching out for them, and I didn't have the slightest idea anything was wrong. "I feel awful about it." "Don't beat yourself up over it," I reassured her. "It's tough to keep tabs on 14 girls in a crowded bar unless you're a pro security guard or a dad. Most of us dads have what I like to call dad vision, it just kicks in." I hung out and chatted with the women at the table, joking around until they decided it was time to head out to another spot for the rest of their night. As we said our goodbyes, I gave Kathy a gentle kiss on the lips, feeling pretty damn good about how the evening turned out, and even better knowing I had her number saved in my phone. "Get a room, you two," one of the girls shouted, sparking a wave of loud laughter from the group as they watched us. I gave a subtle lick of my lips, tasting the faint trace of Kathy's lipstick as I watched the women file out of the restaurant. I grabbed my drink and headed back to my original spot at the bar, settling in with a satisfied sigh. "Looks like that turned out pretty well for you," the bartender said with a chuckle as I sat down. "Who would have guessed?" I shot back with a laugh. "A bachelorette party, of all things. Pour me one more for the road so I can toast to my good luck before I head out." My new pal, Nick the bartender, earned himself a crisp 20 as a tip for the night's service. For the wedding, Kathy told me her dress was light blue, so I opted for my dark blue pinstripe suit, the one I call my own the room look. I thought we looked sharp together, and apparently, so did a bunch of her family members at the event. Quite a few folks came up to me during the wedding to thank me for watching out for Emma that night at the bar. Turns out, the bride had spent the last 2 weeks telling anyone who'd listen that I was some kind of hero. "Heroic and handsome, what a winning combo," said Kathy's sister, Donna Fulham, the bride's mom, as she approached us to introduce herself before the ceremony. "Thanks for stepping in to help the girls a couple of weeks back, and for making my sister look like she's finally upgraded her taste in men." I also got to meet Kathy's 24-year-old daughter, Nicole, along with her fiancé, Caleb. "Well, at least one of my parents isn't fishing for dates at a playground," Nicole quipped when we met. "Dad's gonna absolutely despise you if you stick around long enough to meet him." By the time the reception wound down, I had a strong feeling Kathy and I were in it for the long haul. A month later, I introduced her to my kids. My son warmed up to her right away, but my daughter kept her distance a bit. She was still kinda mad at me for divorcing her mom, even throwing out the old line, "Mom didn't even cheat on you." My son, though, he got it. He had a serious girlfriend at the time, and we had a deep talk about what fidelity meant to each of us. Fast forward, and my wife Kathy and I have been retired for a few years now. We marked our 25th anniversary with an incredible Alaskan cruise. With a little help from daily Cialis and some Astroglide, we still make love every morning before we shower and get on with our day. At our age, it's less about the physical stuff and more about staying connected. All 3 of our kids are married and thriving, and we've got 6 grandkids between us to keep us on our toes. Since the divorce, I've probably only spoken to my ex-wife a couple dozen times, mostly at our kids' weddings or during Christmas get-togethers. She's been through a second marriage and divorce since then. According to my kids, she still points the finger at me for how her life turned out, always saying, "I never actually cheated on him." Some folks just don't get it, and I guess she's one of them. And that's the end of my story for today. If you enjoyed hearing it, I'd really appreciate it if you'd give this video a thumbs up and leave a comment down below. Your support helps the algorithm spread my content to more people. If you're new around here, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, it means a lot and helps me keep sharing more stories like this one. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.